You're up.
How you guys doing? My name is Mo Samuel Tuitela, more commonly known as Mo. It's easier that way for everybody. And today we're going to be debating alien life, one of my favorite things to talk about, and obviously one of the favorite things for the media to portray, whether it's X-Files, whether it's zany little cartoons. Everybody's looking up to the stars for obvious reasons. My topic is alien life and its underlying proof. The justification proposition is the existence of alien life has evidence embedded in humanity's histories and civilizations. Let's take it all the way back to one of the first civilizations that everybody knows about. Let's go to ancient Egypt. Ancient Egypt has a lot of architecture, including the most famous being the pyramids. There are over 100 pyramids in Egypt alone. And the rest of the world, there's about 250 to 200 plus in South America, and then there are a lot of other structures that are kind of unclassified as pyramids or different structures like monk mounds and different things like this. The technology built or used to build these pyramids are still under debate today. Nobody really knows how they were built. There's a lot of different debates, and one of my favorite book writers on here, his name is Christopher P. Dunn, who is pretty much like the modern day Indiana Jones. He's been to Egypt for exclusive Egyptian, I forget what the word is called.
Archaeology.
Oh, not that. It's when they pretty much go in there and then
Excavating.
There we go. I was like excavations, and he's been there 5 separate times just to study the pyramids themselves. The Great Pyramids. One of them is the tomb of. I forget his name. I used to know it, but he had a golden top to the Great Pyramid, which is now missing. There are different ideals, and he has a debatable stone by stone kind of foreground to how the pyramids were used as power structures, which is pretty interesting, where they ran an aqueduct from below the pyramids, had a conductor that ran all the way to the top, and this golden thing at the top here, nobody really knows what it was. Some people believe it was the Ark of the Covenant that caused that electrical flow, but it actually gave them depictions of hieroglyphs of electronic wireless power. So, yeah, we still don't know how they did it, but it's still around. There's a lot of evidence behind it, including the hieroglyphs, different writings from ancient Rome and Greece, and the other people who came to Egypt to learn about the technologies that they were learning. And let's move on from ancient Egypt here. Dunn actually said we cannot fathom technology that is unknown to us, and we seldom consider things that may seem impossible to us. He goes on further to say, for those who may still believe in the official chronology of the historical development of metals, identifying copper as the metal of ancient Egyptians, used for cutting granite, which is one of the debates, is that they used copper to cut the blocks and used different levies and levers to raise it. And this was debunked a long time ago. It says identifying copper as the metal of the ancient Egyptians used for cutting granite is like saying that aluminum could be cut using a chisel fashioned out of butter. Moving on to mass confirmations from people all over the world. We have things like UFO sightings. Like, these are things that are somewhat debated between people, whether it's hearsay from one person to another. But since we've moved on to the age of documentation, is what I call it, everybody has a camera, everybody has some sort of recording device. There has been numerous amounts of video recordings, even from the 1960s, of bright shining lights, UFOs, things that can't be identified regularly in our systems here in America, including our aircrafts. These UFO sightings span years upon years, and one of the first ones that have been seen in America or documented was in the in the 1600s, which is like ancient America to us, by a Puritan. And if you don't know what a Puritan is, these are the people who are like the first settlers of America. They came here first, very strong Christian doctrine. They didn't lie, they didn't cheat, they didn't steal any of that, quote unquote. And this guy actually made a point to write it down in his diary. And there were other people who saw the sighting as well. They just defined it as a giant spherical orb, which is fun because UFOs, they don't really have a specific form. That's why they're called UFOs, unidentified flying objects. The latest sighting was at Mexico for the earthquake. There were blue lights in the sky, a EMP pulse that has been documented, and if you want to look it up, the sightings are there, and you can actually see in the video, it's pretty interesting. It shows a magnetized view of the Earth, and everything looks kind of blue. And then in Mexico over here, right before the earthquake, you see this huge pulse from nothing, it seems, and then it just kind of shoots out, and then you see the earthquake. It's pretty dope. Crop circles are also one of those huge pointing factors. They develop overnight. Nobody really knows where they come from. No one knows who makes them. They've been trying to debunk them for years. The government has launched different investigations into these different farmers who have them. They've actually appeared not only on farms, but out in the middle of nowhere, in deserts, and they're highly mathematical, which is what drives a lot of people crazy, because they all either can be derived from Fibonacci's diagram, where everything is pretty much the same and expands out. If you don't know what that means, look it up. It's crazy math. I don't have enough time to get into all of it, because everything is math. It's pretty nuts. The other thing about these is the crop circles have a history that also dates back to the 1600s in England, where there was a folklore story for the first one shown, was that a man had hired a man to cut his crops. And the guy had asked for a large price, and then he said to him, you know what, I'd rather have the devil do it. And the next morning, he found that there were crop circles in his crops, and nobody knew how it got there. The latest one that we've seen was actually last month in August 2017 in Essex. They tend to have a huge crop circle radius within the UK and also in the Netherlands, because these are places that have like large fields that really aren't being occupied. You know, we have a lot of farmland here, but there's a lot of vegetation. We do have some here, but it's not as recent. And furthermore, wrapping up everything, it's just these things are things we can't explain, and a lot of people are looking for an explanation. And obviously, there's not really a finite one that most people can give them, besides there's something going on here that we can't manifest. We have tried. There are things from either the pyramids and the structures that have been shown before, like the Stonehenge, and things that have been around for a very long time, that we have no idea how they got there, no idea how they could have been built, and the technology today still doesn't add up. Thank you, guys.
All right, well, let's start with a couple of things that are pretty solid about the speech. I think you have generally a solid delivery. You have good audience contact. You fill the speech with a lot of interesting ideas. I think that the subject is kind of compelling, but I do think that you need to give it a little bit more structure, especially at the beginning. There's not really a preview. In the body of the speech, I can tell that there's this argument about Egypt, about UFO sightings, and about crop circles. So it seems to me like those are the three supporting points in your argument, but they ought to be clearer at the beginning of the speech. You need to lay them out for us. The proposition, I know what the subject is, but the proposition sounds like it's got multiple claims in it. It's not as clearly identified as it should be, so that's a little bit problematic. But there's a nice controversy on the subject, I think, that, and I like the fact that you talk about the background. We've got X-Files and cartoons, and people have been talking about these kinds of things for years. I think those are a good justification for at least talking about this subject. The proof, I think, is a little problematic because you make reference to a lot of examples, but the examples are often partial and incomplete. They aren't very well cited. All the stuff about the pyramids, for instance, there's only one direct quote that you have in there, although I suspect that most of your information probably came from Christopher Dunn's books. You're not citing that particularly well. You kind of make this argument about the number of pyramids that there are. You make a reference to the golden top on one of them, and I don't get a source citation on that. This idea that hieroglyphics in essence prove that there was some kind of electronic power that was being utilized. I'm going, where does this come from? Obviously we can't see the hieroglyphics, but somebody has made this inference, and maybe it's done, maybe it's somebody else, but you need to tell me where it came from, and because I have no way of assessing the credibility there. You do try and build up Dunn as a credible source on this particular point by referring to the number of excavations and expeditions that he's done there. I don't know what his professional credentials are, other than apparently he's visited Egypt a number of times. So if he has a degree, a background, if he's written books, those would be things that I think would build his credibility a little bit more as well. You make reference to ancient writings, but we never get any quotes of those ancient writings except right at the end when you refer to the crop circles story and the Puritans, for instance. The Mexico example where you're talking about how there was an EMP pulse right before the earthquake. And I'm going, well, where's the citation on this? This sounds like a piece of information that could be a piece of factual data, but without any way to verify it and without it, any direct. I mean, I'm sure. I don't think you're making it up, but I didn't hear a citation in the presentation about those kinds of things, and I think you need that. You're relying on the folklore story at the very end, and I think that's a little bit of a problem because folklore is exactly what it sounds like, folklore, and it's unsubstantiated for the most part, but it's a good story. I think it's a nice summary of the idea that you're talking about. And I think that that's the general problem that I have with a lot of the argument is you're trying to summarize theories that people have without necessarily proving that those theories substantiate your claim. That something is unexplained, I don't think automatically means that we had aliens. That aliens might explain those things, that's a little bit closer to where your argument is going with this, and I think you could develop that a little bit more. All right, thank you.